Now, in order to understand punk rock, we need to know what it is all about. Punk rock is a subgenre of rock that developed through cultural and societal changes in the 1970s. Punk rock combines fast-paced guitars and drums, harsh vocals, short songs, and lyrical themes centered around anti-establishment and anti-authoritarian regimes. This style of music formed after the conclusion of the Vietnam War, where musical groups like Black Sabbath and Creedence Clearwater Revival were writing music about America's involvement in the war. Punk rock was mainly found in three parts of the world. The first part would include England, and more specifically, London. The main punk bands from the city would include The Damned, The Clash, and the Sex Pistols. The second part of the world that featured punk rock was on the east coast of the US, more specifically New York and Washington, D.C. Notable bands from this area would include Minor Threat, Reagan Youth, and the Ramones. The last area where punk rock was prominent was on the West Coast, and more specifically, California. The bigger bands were from the two cities of San Francisco, which featured bands such as the Dead Kennedys and DRI, who were originally from Texas but relocated to San Francisco, and Los Angeles, that featured the bigger punk bands such as Circle Jerks, Black Flag, Descendants, and the Adolescents. These punk rock bands all played in small club venues across different parts of the world, but one city stands out among the rest: the city of Fresno, California.
How many times has this happened to you? You're sitting around and you're drinking some brew. People start to tell me what to think. I just tell them, shut up and drink!
Once these famous bands formed, they had a big influence on the people of Fresno to the point where they decided to make their own bands and make their own music. Bands that formed from the start of the scene in 1979 were the Frigidettes, Toxic Shock, Nazi Bitchin' the Jews, New Assault, Subtractions, and Capital Punishment, who was the most popular band among this scene. During the 1980s in Fresno, some bands would stick around for a while but then break up. But as some bands broke up, others would form shortly after from members of the previous bands. One example of this would be the band Cambodian Kids, who formed in 1982 and disbanded in 1983. The drummer of that band, Sean Bard, would start playing guitar with his friend and singer Fat Jerry and drummer Korean Diaz from the Frigidettes, along with Gilbert R. Gilbert on bass. This band would take on many different names before settling on Vicious Bunnies.
My family on my mom's side was Catholic, and Fat Jerry was the singer, and he was the founder of the Catholic Prostitutes. And after a few shows, that's when I said to him, I said, yeah, you know, I think it was actually only one show that we have on that, a flyer with that name on it. I told him, yeah, we can't do that, or I can't do that. I can't be in a band called that because my family will, you know, kind of freak out. And so that's when he changed the name to Christmas Death. Mm-hmm. And that was only a few shows because I told him, yeah, that's still kind of, and then it became Vicious Bunnies. And actually,
this band would go on for a year until they broke up, and then Sean started his new band with lead singer Bob Ross. No, not that Bob Ross, this Bob Ross, aka Burnin' Bob. And drummer Kelly Camplain from the Visalia band, My Three Sons, who replaced Diaz in Vicious Bunnies, as well as Drake Cotton playing bass in 1984. This band became Burnin' Bob and the Big Boys.
And Jerry had quit the band, and Bob had, well, I was there with Kelly, the drummer from Vicious Bunnies, and Drake, I think, was there as well, and we were all hanging out and stuff, and that's when Jerry had quit, either there or before that. I can't remember exactly when. And Burnin' Bob says, well, I can sing, you know, and so we're like, oh, okay, yeah. And then Lauren Whitey, he goes, yeah, you you guys should call your band Burning Bob and the Big Boys. And we were all like, well, okay, yeah, that sounds cool. Even though there was a band called the Big Boys.
Yeah.
I think because Burning Bob and the Big Boys, it kind of, was different. But
Yeah.
we rolled with it,
Mm-hmm.
and started playing shows under that and played quite a lot of shows with Burning Bob.
Another example would be Dale Stewart, who was the guitar player for the Subtractions and then New Assault and then Capital Punishment in 1981. Other notorious bands that formed during this time were Harsh Reality, Sad Boys, which was an acronym for Shut Up and Drink, Slut Vinyl, Audio Terrorism, and Death Camp. These bands would play at venues across Fresno, and some do not exist anymore today. Some of these venues would include Eagles Hall, Knights of Columbus, Belmont Ballroom, and the Wilson Theater. As the bigger bands, such as Black Flag or DRI, came and played in Fresno, many of the local bands would open for the larger bands. Crowds flooded these small venues to watch their friends play in bands, as well as seeing the headliners. From 1979 to 1986, the punk scene in Fresno was at its strongest, with bands coming from different parts of the world coming to play, as well as the locals forming their own bands in response to the widespread popularity of punk rock at the time. After 1986, the punk scene in Fresno slowed down as less bands began to form and more bands were beginning to break up.
Just a lot of different musicians getting together, playing, a lot of promoters bringing good bands through. As far as a takeaway, I mean, it sucked that it had to end.
Yeah.
Everything, like I had explained to you, I feel that music, whether it's punk or metal or whatever, you get this point where it comes up and it peaks, and then all of a sudden it just kind of falls.
Yeah.
And then later down the road, it kind of, comes back to life again. And, when it all kind of started to fall and not as many shows and, I think Knights of Columbus was about one of the only solid places towards the end to play.
Yeah.
And a lot of the other local places, venues, they didn't want slam dancing. That was, something that was, in their eyes, dangerous.
Yeah.
Could be a liability, even though we weren't out to hurt anybody or some people did get in fights, but it was just like any concert or anything that you would ever go to. There's always knuckleheads,
Yeah.
But as far as the pit, and like I had explained to you, I can remember seeing people fall, and the first thing you do is you scoop them up.
Yep.
And you bring them back up and dance with them. It was a big family. Even though there was your skinheads.
The punk scene in Fresno is still vibrant to this day. Although it may not be as strong as it was in the 1980s, it still had a lasting impact on the people and music as a whole in Fresno.
Dirty fucker.